Oh, boy. Paul Ryan today talking about a deal that would give amnesty to illegal immigrants, providing a partial down payment, we're told, on the border wall. A partial down payment. That's better than taking money away from the Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents or not funding any part of the wall. No agreement reached, apparently, after a closed-door conference meeting. Ryan promises talks will continue this weekend. Of course he does. Doesn't he look self-assured and just filled with talent? Political commentator and best-selling author Ann Coulter is brimming with talent, as always, and is here tonight. We're delighted to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Let's start with the news of the day. Paul Ryan is thrilled that there is legislation bubbling up from the rank and file instead of him, as the Speaker of the House, having to bring down the hammer and tell them how to vote. That's what he wants us to believe.
On amnesty. I'm apparently going to have to spend my entire adult life fighting amnesty. Why is this the one bill that comes up every term of Congress? How many different ways can the American people say they don't want it? This is for the donors. They want their cheap labor. And since I suspect, I know blue-collar workers and the working class don't want it, and I think your viewers are probably more of those Chamber of Commerce types, I would just like to point out that...
my viewers are definitely not Chamber of Commerce types.
Good luck to you, Koch brothers, under a government run by Nancy Pelosi, because that's what you're getting if you keep bringing in cheap labor that votes against you 70-30.
Yeah,
that is all. And by the way, Hispanics do not care about amnesty. I point this out in my book, Adios America. You've got to read Adios America. They vote Democrat because they like the government programs. They like the handouts. They don't pay high taxes. They are Democrats, and it has nothing to do with amnesty.
Well, Democrats and rhinos are basically synonymous. They are the same thing. They are opposite wings of the same bird, and the American people are getting the bird. Every racial breakdown demographically, the preponderance of those folks who are African American, Hispanic, white, Asian, you name it, they oppose amnesty, and they are deeply concerned about the impact of immigration, and the national left-wing media lies about it day in and day out, and so does Paul Ryan.
Yes.
And so does the Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, and I don't think Paul Ryan or the rest of these guys care. They're not thinking even about their re-elections. They're thinking about life after Congress.
Well,
Eric Cantor, for example, who lost his seat over amnesty, I am sure he's making about 10 times more than he was making in Congress as a lobbyist on K Street.
And that's going to be a low multiple for Paul Ryan.
You want to make the money after you leave. Yeah. Push through amnesty. There will be a reward waiting. And look, I've already started thinking about how I'm going to enjoy myself if the country is destroyed by an amnesty or no wall. And the way I'm going to enjoy it is watching all of American business have to live under the policies, those pro-business policies of California, because that's the country you're going to be living under when no Republican can get elected.
Not if John Cox gets elected. And Gavin Newsom only beat him by 7 points.
But California used to give us Reagan and Nixon because of immigration. It cannot elect a Republican statewide now. Good luck to Cox. We'll see what happens. He was great. Liked your interview. The point is, businessmen in America, they are doing exactly what Lenin said about capitalists. They will sell us the rope with which to hang them. They are going they're killing themselves with this vote because they just want the cheap labor. They can't think more than, the next profit.
On the positive side, President Trump, every one of the people he endorsed did well in the last primary, in particular in California. He really supporting strongly John Cox. It is a very simple thing for the Republican Party. They can either keep the illusion that Paul Ryan somehow is a Ryan Republican is something that can get elected. You're going to watch about 25 Rhino Republicans go into the dirt because of their association with him and the status quo policies of the chamber, the establishment. Does any one of those dunces understand that President Trump is the man of the hour, the man of this century, and without question is on the right side of history?
Yeah, and that he won over immigration. People have been lied to over and over about this, and there are going to be more than a handful of Republicans going down if a Republican Congress passes an amnesty. I mean, the one thing I will say...
By the way, we should point out, President Trump says he will veto...
Well, that's what I was going to mention. And if he does and makes a huge fight over immigration this fall, I will say... he was a genius to let that heinous omnibus bill go through earlier this year to make sure the fight would come down right before the election. But if he lets it go, well, you don't want to know what I'll be saying about him then.
Well, you've been saying some pretty rough things. The fact of the matter is, which frankly don't take into account 16 months in which he has become, frankly, a historic figure because of what has been accomplished in this country. Whether it's an economic policy,
all
foreign
we wanted
policy.
was a wall.
Yeah, well, that's another matter, and that brings us back to Paul Ryan, the Chamber of Commerce, Wall Street.
He doesn't need them.
Did I mention the Koch brothers? It's amazing to watch what's happening in this country. This president withstanding all of those forces and getting stronger by the day. It's a beautiful thing to watch. Even Ann Coulter has to admit that.
The people are with him, but it's on immigration. He's got to push through the immigration
it's on immigration
stuff.
and a host of other issues, but that wall, I agree with you, has got to be built, and Ryan has got to be turned back, period. Ann Coulter, good to have you with us.
Thank you. He doesn't need Congress to build the wall.
She just won't quit, folks.